What's going on, my exotic family? It's your boy Dre. Welcome back to the channel. So today's video, we're actually going to be talking about things to consider before purchasing your first pet reptile. I may or may not have did a similar video like this before. However, things always change. Things always kind of jump in my mind, and I kind of just want to redo it. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So go ahead and stay tuned. Alright everybody, so welcome back to the video. Like I said, we're going to be talking about things to consider before getting your first pet reptile. I have my scaleless Texas rat snake out here with me, my boy Cubert. You know, he's always angry. We're going to give him his time on the camera since I don't show him off nearly as much as I do some of my other snakes. But like I said, we're going to be talking things to consider before buying your first pet reptile. For me at least, I like to try to break it down into a couple of different things that when I get my reptiles definitely play a factor. So size, cost, and feeding, as well as, you know, can I handle this in the future? So breaking down with size, we all know not all reptiles are going to be the same size, whether we're talking lizards, snakes, even arachnids and frogs are grouped in there. But we'll talk snakes and lizards because this seems to be really popular nowadays, more so into the pythons and the monitors. There's dwarf monitors, there's dwarf python or dwarf boas and things like that. So you really want to make sure whatever animal that you narrow it down to, you do proper research into what you'll need for that animal long term, because they're not going to stay small more than likely. Now, if we're talking something like a leopard gecko, you still want to make sure you do your research, but they're going to get nowhere near as big as, let's say, a Savannah monitor or Asian water monitor. So again, that's something that you should consider when looking into an animal. Chances are, if it's your first animal, probably don't want to lean toward an Asian water monitor, just considering the size, enclosure that they need and the care that they need for when they get older. Now, I have seen it done, but again, it's just not something that I would personally recommend someone without the proper knowledge or even just experience with dealing with big lizards. And the same with snakes. Depending on what type of snake you get, we know they can grow pretty rapidly. They eat pretty good. If we're talking like a 6 foot plus snake, you're definitely going to want to make sure you have the room for their enclosure, because if you don't, then where are you going to put them? As well as you don't want to cram them into a small enclosure and just leave them there for their entire life, because that can ultimately result in a very cranky, angry snake. But even then, your snake won't grow properly and it just won't be as healthy. Alrighty, so next we're talking, just temperament, I guess. We know every snake has what they're known for. We know blood pythons are known to be defensive snakes, and that's not always the case if you guys have seen me handle Kato repeatedly on this camera and on Instagram. But with that being said, you want to make sure you can get a snake that you can handle. Obviously, everyone's going to have their opinion. You can, read what's online, but it's ultimately going to come down to you and your experience and how you deal with said animal. So we know that snakes can be very defensive, or reptiles can be very defensive animals in general. So if you just get the snake or you just brought it home, typically you want to just kind of leave it alone for about a week or two and let it adjust to the new surroundings, especially if it's a baby snake. Obviously, it's new surroundings, so they're going to be very, very defensive. They're going to be confused, and they're going to more than likely look at you as a predator. Now, if we're talking a snake that was bred by a breeder, more than likely they probably had a lot of handling, but there are some cases where some of those snakes just aren't quite as habituated as others, or they just might be frightened. If you had the snake shipped, it could just be something that happened on the delivery to you that may have frightened it and it caused it to, get really stressed, and you just never know. So you definitely want to give them that time to adjust in their enclosure, but ultimately get a snake that you can handle. If you've never had a snake before and you're worried about how it's going to act, don't go out and buy a retic or a berm or an African rock python or anything that has the ability to do some serious damage. That's not what you want to do. I would definitely start with something small: corn snake, garter snake, rat snake, something that doesn't get huge. Like I said, it's Cubert here. Cubert's about 3 years old now, and versus my berm is 2, and my berm is like double his size. So you definitely want to get something that you can handle, that is well within your realm. Now, again, with that being said, it's still going to take a certain amount of research for any of the snakes that I just named, or any snake for that matter, or any reptile for that matter. Same thing goes for if you've never had a lizard before. Don't go out and get a freaking Nile monitor, because why would you do that to yourself? It's not going to work. Generally, they're very nippy as babies, generally, and I use that term loosely because every individual is different. However, if it's not something that you're used to and you don't have that experience, do not go out and get an animal that gets 6 foot plus and you can't handle it. They get huge, they need a lot of room, and no. Just don't do that. And all right, so lastly, I'm gonna talk about cost. You guys know I have quite a bit of, I have a lot of reptiles. I show off my snakes a lot more because that's what I have most of. I only have, what, 2 lizards left and a tortoise, and I will update you guys on why I said left in another video. However, the reptile market has skyrocketed within the last couple of years just because the demand for reptiles has gone up, especially, you know, with all the morphs and everything and animals becoming available and not available. So the market is ever changing. So make sure you don't bankrupt yourself trying to keep up with everyone else getting certain reptiles. That happens a lot as well. You know, it's even happened with, you know, me. I'll post a certain animal and then I'll get a bunch of DMs like, oh my gosh, how much should it cost? And that's cool, that's great. I'm glad to promote animals, but I feel like education should come first. Educate yourself on the animal first, because there's so many people that can afford an animal, but they know nothing about it. And it kind of just makes it pointless. Don't go out and buy something and impulse buy it if you're not ready to care for that animal. So cost definitely goes into effect. I feel like now more than ever, reptiles are a lot more expensive than they used to be. There's reptiles that I have, you know, that before I even, you know, became interested in them, really, they weren't nearly as much as what they were. So you definitely want to keep that in mind when purchasing. Just be a responsible keeper. Don't overbuy, don't impulse buy, and make sure it's something that you can handle long term. And when I say cost of the animal, I'm not talking about just the initial animal. I'm talking setup and upkeep of that animal to keep it healthy and alive. So 3 big things to keep in mind. Another thing I will say is husbandry. I'm just throwing this one out there. Get an animal that you can properly maintain. Don't shortcut it. I know a lot of people will go out and spend a ton of money on an animal and then they'll try to skimp out on the enclosure, which makes no sense to me. And I know someone will probably come on this video and argue racks. I'm not here to argue. Everybody has their opinion. Again, I've said this 100 times. Me personally, I have racks, as you guys can see. I got 2 behind me. I just put this one together, just did a video on it. But again, I do not think that they should be permanent long-term homes for the snakes. I'm literally using them because I have grow outs. None of these snakes are huge. Some of these guys are pretty big, which is why they're in here now. It's a bigger rack than this one. This is a 28 quart rack and this is a 41 quart rack. But again, this will not be their permanent home. As you guys know, I still haven't moved yet, and my snakes are at my sister's apartment in the basement. So I can't just use her basement to build these huge enclosures that I want to build. So I'm just buying myself some time until that can happen, until I can get these guys in their huge enclosures. But for the sake of the video, don't go out and get an animal and then only put it in like a 20-gallon tank and think that that's going to hold the animal, because 9 out of 10 times it's not going to. So just a quick video I wanted to throw together. I get a lot of questions, and that's where a lot of my videos kind of come from. I usually have a list of videos that I go off of, but I've just been having a lot of questions that I've been asked, so I try to make videos out of them just to kind of teach the masses, I guess. And again, I'm no expert. I don't have a degree, you know, anything. This is personally from my experience, and I am still learning myself. So do not take what I say as your holy Bible. Do your research. Don't use just a YouTube video. Take what's said, reference it to everything else, but still do your research on whatever the animal may be. With that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think of this video. Drop a comment down below. If you liked the video, hit that like button for me. That really helps me out a lot. And also, if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Turn those post notifications on so you don't miss anything. Follow me on Instagram at DWExotics. I post daily updates of all of my reptiles. That's right, all of my reptiles, not just the snakes. So if you guys don't know what other animals that I have, check me out on Instagram at DWExotics. And as always, stay exotic.